Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Shruti Prakash Joshi, and I'm Senior Manager, Media Relations and Issues Management at TransLink. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are all gathered here on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. We have 6 speakers at today's conference. We will begin with remarks from Brad West, Mayor of Port Coquitlam and Chair of the Mayor's Council. This will be followed by remarks from Mike Hurley, Mayor of Burnaby and Vice Chair of the Mayor's Council. Following Mayor Hurley's remarks, we will hear from Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim, Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke, and Kevin Quinn, CEO of TransLink. The last speaker for today will be Scott Pearce, President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. After all of the remarks, we will have a short Q&A. I will now invite Mayor West to give his remarks. Mayor West.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My colleague said if I started my remarks in French, it would really give the media something to report. I'm very pleased to be speaking to you on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I want to thank Scott Pearce, President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and TransLink CEO Kevin Quinn for joining us today. As we gather at the UBCM annual convention, local governments and our provincial partners are meeting to find solutions on issues that are critical to the well-being of our communities. At the top of that list is housing and improving affordability for our residents. And the fact is that neither of these challenges can be properly addressed without taking action on transportation. That's why I'm very proud to be standing with almost every mayor in Metro Vancouver. We are speaking with a united voice about the urgency of all levels of government making a commitment to deliver better public transit service in the Metro Vancouver region and making that commitment now. We're here to talk about our plan to deliver a better transit system that will meet our needs. Because of the support of the province, and I want to acknowledge the steps that they've taken, we're in a position to deliver the transit our region deserves and requires, rather than planning cuts, which is a reality that many other cities are facing where their provinces were less supportive. Now, we're hearing a lot from other levels of government about the need for cities to step up and deliver more housing, and we agree. But I want to be clear. If we do not expand transit, we will not be able to reach the targets that are being set for the development of new housing over the coming years. We know that delaying transit expansion will be a disaster for our region. Metro Vancouver is facing record population growth. We're seeing rising federal immigration targets. The federal government's new immigration targets, in fact, will bring hundreds of thousands of new residents to the Lower Mainland. And the federal government must step up to support the decision that they've made. And that's not even the whole story. We are already not meeting the needs of our current population today. We're experiencing serious overcrowding in many parts of the region, and we're at risk of seeing even more bus routes seriously over capacity very soon. To give you an example, transit ridership in Surrey and Langley is at 120% of pre-COVID levels, with some routes in these fast-growing communities seeing ridership that has more than doubled over the past 4 years. Just yesterday, the TransLink team was out at one of the busiest transit choke points in Surrey during the morning rush hour. And I know photos have been distributed to members of the media. They show, along with the latest data, the exploding ridership across the system. In our fastest growing communities, there's simply just not enough transit service to meet the demand. We have to act now so the problem doesn't get worse. Essential services like public transit are fundamental to having well-functioning, prosperous, healthy cities. If people can't rely on transit to get where they need to go, they will get back into their cars. It will lead to more congestion, more greenhouse gas emissions. We will not meet our climate targets. We'll see poorer air quality and a deterioration of our quality of life. Put simply, if we don't have the transit, we won't have the affordable housing our communities desperately need. And we cannot let that happen. The good news is that we have a plan for the future of our transit network, a plan that our entire Mayor's Council supports. The Access for Everyone plan will mean new transit service in every corner of this region. We want to double bus service over the next decade, introduce 9 new bus rapid transit lines, and take steps to expand rapid transit throughout the entire region. Time is running out. We need the provincial and federal governments to commit new funding to keep our transit expansion plans on track. People are tired of hearing politicians talk about plans that never get off the ground and never materialize. Our residents are getting passed up by full buses, or they're stuck in traffic, or they can't even access transit to begin with. Families are desperate to find affordable homes where they can easily get to work or to school. As mayors, we are asking the provincial and federal governments to come to the table now so we can show our communities that we follow through on our commitments and we can deliver for our residents. I'd now like to invite Mayor Mike Hurley, Vice Chair of the Mayor's Council, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor West, and I want to begin to echoing your comments about housing. Metro Vancouver is the most expensive region in our country for housing. That there's absolutely no doubt that we need to add more homes, especially in multifamily buildings and along transit corridors. That is if we're going to make a dent in the current affordability crisis. And it is a crisis. The provincial and federal governments have come through with the funding over the past decade to help us keep transit accessible and economical. That we have to acknowledge. But we just haven't done enough to meet the growing demand. We all know that the expanded transit service, especially in fast-growing communities, helps our residents to lower their monthly transportation budgets and open up access to more affordable housing. We have seen parts of a region transform into vibrant transit-oriented communities where housing, services, schools, recreation, and jobs are within easy reach. As mayors, and you see many mayors here today, we want to see more of this type of development across the region, and it's going to take investments in both housing and public transit to make it happen. It is very telling that transit ridership growth in Metro Vancouver is the highest in all of North America, at 87% of recovery. Our region's post-pandemic rebound is higher than major cities, with rapid transit including New York, Toronto, Montreal, and Miami. We need to add transit service to meet the needs of both our current and future residents. And we need transit if we're going to make life more affordable for people. I know all members of the Mayor's Council are ready to get to work alongside the provincial and federal governments to make our Access for Everyone plan a reality. And I think it's time to get on with the work, and we really need that commitment from the other levels of government to do so. And now I will invite my colleague, Mayor Ken Sim, to speak.
Thanks, Mike. All right, I'll keep my comments pretty short and sweet, and I do want to pick up where Mike and Mayor West and Mayor Hurley left off. about us working together. Now, as the region's mayors, we are united in our commitment to ensuring that public transit is serving the needs of our residents and making it possible for us to plan to build new affordable housing. Whether it's in Surrey or Langley or Maple Ridge or Delta or Port Coquitlam or Vancouver, the fact is our transit system is not keeping up with growing demand. And we're very concerned that we're going to fall even further behind as our population grows. Now, our goals on affordable housing, which are shared by the cities, the province, our province and the federal government, are at risk if we don't do something about this. And as mayors from communities big and small, from every corner of the region, this is something we can all agree on. And I do want to make a City of Vancouver comment. Make no mistake about it, we stand shoulder to shoulder with all of our partners here, standing around here. We actually don't have big mayors and small mayors. We are all equal partners. At the City of Vancouver, we are going to do what's great for the region, because what's great for the region is the right thing to do, but it's also great for the City of Vancouver. And I know every single mayor up here feels the same way about their communities in this region as well. And so I couldn't emphasize enough, we are completely united on this front. And so, you know, the next step is really working together. As Mayor West mentioned, the province is, you know, they've been a good partner to date, and we look to continue that. But make no mistake about it, we need to do something. And it's not just about housing as well. If we want vibrant neighborhoods, if we want our businesses to succeed, if we want a future for everyone in Vancouver and the region and our province, we need to act. It's in our provincial, strategic provincial interests, it's in our federal, it's in our national interests. And to the earlier mayor's comments, you know, this is a no-brainer. You know, we're going to have to do this at some point in time. And if we defer this, all we do is we make the challenge harder to overcome. So we highly encourage senior levels of government to step up now and really help us. It's not in our interest, it's in our interest to do something about this. And so with that, I'm going to welcome up one of my favorite mayors, Brenda Locke, to say a couple of words as well.
It's great to be the favorite.
I said one.
Poetic license. Well, it's really important that we are all here today, and I can tell you, I'm going to speak on behalf of Surrey and certainly the South Fraser. That is the fastest growing region, as we all know, in not only Metro Vancouver, but the entire province of British Columbia. And we are at a point, and thank you to Mayor Hurley for talking about the numbers. Post-COVID in our region is 120%. We are really, really in need of better public transit, and it is at the point, as Mayor West talked about, it is really hampering our ability to build in our city. It is starting to impact our ability to produce housing, and we need to do that. I think everybody recognizes the need and the desire for cities to build. Certainly Surrey is willing and able to build, but transit is becoming to impede that ability of ours. And so with all of our other mayors here, I absolutely I'll beg the provincial and federal governments to step up and contribute to this really important part of affordability and housing affordability for our region. And so with that, I want to thank you, and thank you all for mentioning the challenges that we face in our growing communities. Thank you.
I need no introduction. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to these mayors for their tremendous support. It probably wouldn't surprise anyone to hear me say that I think we need more transit too, right? And compared to 2019, as noted, TransLink's ridership recovery has surpassed every other major transit system in Canada and the US. That's pretty astonishing. And this is happening at a time when we're also facing a very significant housing crisis. We know that transit improves livability and it opens the door to affordable housing. People choose to live where there is accessible transit to get them to work, especially those who rent and those on lower incomes, who often work long distances from where they can afford to reside. And it's demonstrated in our continual ridership growth since 2020 and last week when we reached another post-pandemic record high. While other transit agencies in North America are struggling to recover their riders, there are areas in Metro Vancouver that have not only recovered, but surpassed pre-pandemic volumes. And let me give you a few examples. You've heard about Surrey, right? Ridership in Surrey, for example, has not only returned to former volumes, it's now operating at 20% above pre-pandemic levels. This past summer, the Route 310 between Surrey and Ladner more than doubled its pre-pandemic ridership, seeing more than 1,000 additional compass taps every single weekday. The 531 between White Rock and Langley, that's seen 1,300 more compass taps every single weekday, more boardings, an increase of 60% over pre-pandemic levels. And Route 323, which operates between Newton and Surrey Central SkyTrain Station, now sees over 15,000 compass taps per day. That's 6,000 more than 2019. And this increase is causing overcrowding on nearly 1 out of every 3 buses for customers on this route. We're seeing pass-ups return as well, especially in Surrey and areas of Vancouver. During the afternoon rush hour, 1/3 of bus trips in Vancouver and 1/4 of bus trips in Surrey are overcrowded in the busiest direction. And this will get worse as our population grows. Metro Vancouver is growing by over 50,000 people per year, and these people need a way to conveniently get around the region. We have to get ahead of this growth. We have to expand our transit system to ensure equitable access. And we've done what we can to balance service throughout the region with the resources that we have. And we thank those senior levels of government who have stepped up and help us keep our service levels high to date. But with ridership surging, we are at a critical juncture where we must expand services or we will face systemic overcrowding. The Access for Everyone plan is the solution to help us get ahead of this problem. And this is a really important plan that will double local bus service throughout Metro Vancouver and more than triple the rapid transit network. And that means more bus service throughout the region to help everybody. But this plan is unfunded, and we need support from all levels of government to have more transit. The fact is, accessible transit is vital to the livability of this region, and it plays a significant role in ensuring those on lower incomes can live here affordably. The Access for Everyone 10-year plan provides a framework to expand, and together with the Mayor's Council, we will continue advocating for more transit to ensure this vision can be executed. Thank you so much. I'd now like to welcome Scott Pearce, President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, to speak. Scott.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Pearce. I'm the Mayor of Gore in Quebec, so don't worry, they're not planning transit from here to Quebec. I'm here as President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Our membership municipalities represent 91% of the Canadian population. We represent local leaders like this that work every day to improve life in their communities. So I'm very happy and very thankful to be here with you all today. We're the national voice for municipalities, and this week, obviously, we're discussing the interconnected challenges facing our local governments in British Columbia. Support for transit in the face of growing population is one of them. Canada reached 40 million people this year. The federal government has set a target of 500,000 new permanent residents by 2025. The FCM believes that growth is a good thing, but that growth also requires that all orders of government, federal, provincial, territorial, municipal, work together to ensure Canadians are supported by core services and infrastructure, including transit. Transit is a social, economic backbone to our cities. Transportation also accounts to close to 1/4 of all greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. This means that successful transit is deeply linked to Canada's long-term health. We owe it to our current and future residents to work together to improve and build transit that is accessible, efficient, affordable, and sustainable. Long-term planning and predictable funding for major infrastructure initiatives are crucial for communities to contribute to Canada's net zero goal by 2050. And to attract and retain workers and families, Canada needs to remain competitive. That's why FCM advocated for many years the establishment of a federal permanent public transit fund. To ensure uninterrupted federal funding for public transit, FCM is calling for the Permanent Public Transit Fund to be established in legislation in 2024, with new funding available for planning and design costs and a mechanism to approve projects for capital funding. And while the FCM has called on the fund to provide no less than $3 billion per year for a full range of eligible capital expenses on its current timeline, we recognize that effective planning for ambitious projects like Access for Everyone may require certainty sooner. We know that transit agencies have been suffering from budgetary shortfalls, a problem further exacerbated by diminished ridership during COVID. Combined with the increasing pressures municipalities face, infrastructure in need of renewal, communities in need of climate adaptation measures, improved community buildings for a growing population, and much, much more. It has never been clearer that municipalities need greater partnership with other orders of government to serve all Canadians. I know my colleagues on the Mayor's Council are eager to see the federal government commit to the doubling of the Canada Community Building Fund, which is a long-standing advocacy priority for FCM, and the most direct way that municipalities and the federal government can partner together. Our message today could not be clearer. Our municipalities are growing as Canada grows. Municipalities feel the effects that growth first, and we do so with limited revenue tools. And I'll finish, I went through what I was saying, but for me, I believe it's the responsibility of the provincial and federal government to listen, to work with municipal leaders like this. Why? Because these are the experts on the ground. These are the government of proximity. These are the folks that answer calls from residents when there's problems. That doesn't happen on Parliament Hill. That happens in our town halls and our city halls across the country. So I think it would be in the best interest of the federal and provincial governments to work together with municipalities to improve life for all Canadians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. We will now take a few questions. We have limited time. We have to empty this room, so a few questions to begin with. The mayors will be available for one-on-ones afterwards outside the room. We will take one question and one follow-up. If you have a question, please do come here or let my colleague know. John, show yourself. If you have a question, let John know and he'll let me know. And we'll begin with Richard Zussman, Global. Richard, go ahead.
Mayor West, there's no dollar figure attached to any of this at all. And so you're in essence asking both the province and the federal government for a blank check here. How much are you specifically asking for? And as you are acutely aware, these governments only approve projects that are very specific. So what are we looking at in terms of short-term funding and longer-term improvements to the infrastructure, and where would those, let's call it SkyTrain extensions be?
So it is a long-term plan, and I think nobody's naive enough here to believe that the province is going to hand over a massive blank check. But we need to start making progress on this plan year over year, seeing improvement. So in totality, the plan is $20 billion. But again, we expect each year to be able to make a submission to the federal and provincial government that identifies the projects. We've been working collectively to identify those. A number of them are in the public sphere, whether it be the doubling of bus service, introducing new BRT lines. The projects will be there. They'll be submitted to the provincial and federal government, but they also take significant periods of time to deliver as well. So we need that commitment. We need to be able to sit down now with the provincial and federal government, identify the parts of the plan that we begin to move forward and deliver. So there's a process that both levels of government have for us to make those submissions. We'll make them, but in totality, that plan is $20 billion, and it represents significant improvement to this region. In fact, the biggest improvement Metro Vancouver has ever seen in public transit.
Follow, Pritchard?
Where are the priority areas in terms of executing? What areas in Metro Vancouver need transit, and can you rank them in order of where the priorities are?
My colleagues say all areas, which is...
Your job as the chair to rank them. You get to pick your favorite.
But I think what you've heard is this is a very united group, and we believe firmly that no one part of this region can win and another part of it lose. We all have to see improvements because the growth is happening all over. Yes, there's parts of our region that are growing faster than others, and there's an urgent need to address those. I think that's well documented, well known. But, for instance, specifically on the BRTs, the 9 new BRTs would be all over the region, and we'll go through a process, and we, in fact, are doing that right now, to identify the priority of those based on where the need is, based on having local partners who TransLink can work with to deliver them. So, again, that process will play itself out, but the real answer is, Richard, that whether you live in the North Shore or the Tri-Cities, certainly south of the Fraser, Vancouver, I got to make sure I don't forget any of them. That's the problem when you start listing them. Anyways, the reality is no matter where you rest your head at night in this region, you need to see expansion, you need to see more options, and that's what this plan does.
Thank you. The next question comes from Dan Fumano, Vancouver's Sun. But again, we have limited, time here, so just one question now. I will not be able to take follow-ups. Dan.
I'd like to hear from the council chair or vice chair, or maybe even both. I only get to ask one question, as you heard. So if I get 2 responses, that'd be even better. Sure. What I'd like to hear is, as second-term mayors and you've been on the council since last term. Now you're the chair and the vice chair. It's been a little more than a year, I think, since this plan was released. I think it was June of last year. In that time, how would you describe what you've heard from the provincial and especially the federal governments and their representatives in closed meetings behind closed doors? Because we're obviously not privy to all of that. How would you describe it? Do they seem like they're eager? Is it slow? Is it not commensurate with the growth we're seeing in ridership, the growth we're expected to see in population through immigration? What are you hearing from the feds especially, but also the province?
Yeah. Well, again, I think I want to start by acknowledging that the province did step up in a very significant way recently to help us through the after effects of COVID. And because of the decision they made, we're having a very different discussion now than other places are having, where they're looking at rationalizing and cutting service. So the discussions with the province and the federal government have been productive. I think we all share the same goals. I mean, every time you hear from a provincial or federal official, it's about affordability, it's about housing. Our plan is essential to deliver that. So we are not fundamentally at odds over what the objectives are. And I find in our discussions there's a lot of buy-in into the plan itself, like what it will deliver on the ground. Of course, the challenge, and it's always the challenge, is around funding. You've heard here today very clearly, we don't think that the provincial or federal government are acting as urgently as they need to address that. And that's the whole point of today. We need to get on with this.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Penny Dufflo, CTV.
I don't think it's a secret that many communities haven't really leveraged the land that they have around transit stations for housing. So where is municipalities' roles in making ridership more sustainable and predictable, ensuring that density so that these multi-billion-dollar investments are going where they're needed most? I mean, that's been like a real gap here that there doesn't seem to be much change there.
I'm going to hand that off to a mayor who has a SkyTrain, which our plan also would fix, SkyTrain to Port Coquitlam.
So I think, being a mayor that has 2 SkyTrain lines, and I think you can see how that can work. If you look at Burnaby and how we have built around our SkyTrain stations, I think that's the success story that we need to see in many other places. And I think we all recognize that there needs to be density to support investments in that type of transit. And we know we can't move forward with those types of investments without that density that's needed to support it. So I think everyone in this around here recognizes that, and we're willing to work with the federal and provincial governments to get us there. But we need to get going on these investments really quickly, or we're going to fall behind, and it's going to be even more difficult to catch up. So I think, you know, from my perspective, yes, you're absolutely right. We need to see the density, and that will come.
I'll just note as well that it wasn't always this way, but TransLink now has agreements with local government when this investment is made that ensures that that density occurs as well.
Thank you, Mayor West. And the last question comes from Justin McElroy, CBC.
You're all at a conference where mayors and councillors are talking about requests for affordable housing, requests for more supports for safety, requests for more supports for mental health issues that aren't just in Metro Vancouver but across British Columbia. What do you say to a provincial or federal politician who says, you know what, TransLink ridership is coming back at levels that we're not seeing, like you said, anywhere else in North America? It seems to be going pretty good. There's a lot of big priorities right now. We've given 2 bailouts already. I'm not putting this at the top of my priority list.
Nobody's saying that, Justin. This theoretical politician who very misinformed. You know, what I would say is I respect that right across this province there's huge issues. Communities are grappling with many overlapping and intersecting challenges. And that, again, is, I think, what we've highlighted here. Delivering transit is key to a number of priorities and challenges that not only the Metro Vancouver region faces, but the province faces. The province is committed to very ambitious climate goals. You will not meet them. This province will not meet them. The country will not meet them unless we get the type of investment that we're talking about in transit that gives people an alternative to their vehicle. We talk about affordability. We will not be able to see people get the affordability they require to secure housing that they need and deserve if we don't have an expansion of our transit system. You know, these things are so intertwined. And so I think by investing in a plan like this, the province and the federal government are demonstrating that they are taking action on the things that everyone is concerned about, because there is that interconnectedness. And I think they get that. I do think that they get it, and it is a priority, but we need that urgency. We need to take action. People need to feel it. They need to see it. They need to be able to use it. And I think that's how the public is going to judge both us as local leaders, but the provincial and federal government in particular, because that's the level of government that really has the resources to be able to make this happen.